One thing I really want to make sure that we asked you about too, in just reading your paper in the or your article in the Atlantic, can you explain to us um, the the thing with municipal bonds? I've seen that a lot, and I think what's important about the municipal bonds thing is it's something reasonable that the federal government could do. Like I would love the federal government to pass a law that says you can't move sports teams. We're mandating promotion relegation. It ain't gonna happen. But and also I know a lot of people are saying, oh, get rid of the exception, the the exception that Major League Baseball has. What's that?
Antitrust.
The antitrust exemption. But the other sports teams don't have that, and they do the same shit. So I don't actually think that's important. So can you tell us a little bit more about the municipal bonds thing?
I will do my best. In broad strokes,
Okay.
about 100 years ago, the federal government passed a law that exempted municipal bonds that states and local governments could take out from interest payments, I believe. So
For like investors, right? You sell bonds.
yeah, right. Yeah. And so the idea was that this would incentivize local governments to build public infrastructure. And so it was like for parks, roads, big projects that they would never been able to pay for on their own. They would never been able to make those interest payments on their own. This was a way of the federal government saying, here, you can do this, and it will be tax exempt for you guys. The intent of that exemption was not to fund stadium construction. It was not to fund exactly private infrastructure projects or private construction projects, especially not for projects that proved extremely privately valuable at extreme public costs, right? Fast forward to 1986 with the Tax Reform Act. Congress tries to eliminate this practice of states using tax-exempt municipal bonds for private projects. They went 90% of the way, but for some reason didn't go all the way. They left a loophole. They said that you cannot use these bonds, or you can only use these bonds on projects for which no more than 10% of the revenues derived from the project can be used to pay them off. So it was basic, before in the 1960s and whatnot, when cities and states built totally publicly funded stadiums, they used these bonds and they used project revenues to make their payments, right? Now, in 1986, they were like, no, you can't use those. You cannot use revenues from the project to pay off the bonds. The idea was no city or state, no local government would be insane enough to say, no, we're going to take on all that cost ourselves, and we're not going to use project revenues. We're going to pay for it by other means, tax increases out of the general fund, et cetera, et cetera. They wildly underestimated how silly, let's say, these local governments could be, or possibly they overestimated the hold that already professional sports had over cities and states, specifically the hold that the threat of relocation had over them, because cities and states accepted this price wholesale. And so what you're suggesting, and what has been attempted several times in Congress, including recently by President Obama in 2016, is just simply closing the loophole and saying you cannot use these bonds for any kind of private project or for stadium projects in general. Full stop. That would, that would likely, hopefully, dissuade cities and states from doing this. The state of Congress right now is such that I'm not sure we can rely on any bill being passed. But yeah, that is a long and probably, inarticulate way of describing that. I
No,
hope
that's
that
great.
I think
That was
right.
good.
I think it
That
was
was great.
great. I think
Yeah,
it was
that was
great.
good.
I think
Okay.
just to like make it clear, the when we say that bonds are tax free, it just means that like so you know a city. So like for instance, Clark County is going to take out a bunch of bonds to pay for the stadium, the new stadium, and then they're going to have to pay them off. And private bondholders in the private market will buy them, and that way Clark County will get money to help the A's, to give money to the A's to help them build the
Yeah.
stadium. And when it's tax free, it means that those bond holders, the private citizens who buy them, don't have to pay tax on the interest that they get, which means that they charge a smaller interest rate, which means like that the cities, are able to invest at like, a lower cost. And, it's sort of like, it's sort of like, giving a cigarette to somebody who's trying to quit smoking. It's like cut them
Mhm.
off.